Hello everybody, and thank you for coming to today's hedgehog-friendly campus, Fascinating World of Hedgehogs talk. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Catherine Mayfield, Sustainability Champion at the university, and I'd like to introduce Joe from Hedgehog Friendly Campus, who's going to talk initially, and then I'll move on to talk about what we're doing at the university. There'll be an opportunity for questions at the end. The chat should be open, so if anyone wants to put anything in the chat, feel free. Otherwise, can I hand over to you now, Joe, please?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's fine. Let me just get my slides ready. And Catherine, if you can give me a thumbs up or just a holler if you can see them okay. Is that all right? Are we all ready to go?
Yeah.
Thank you so much. And happy Green Week, everyone. So yeah, my name's Joe. I'm the Programme Manager for the Hedgehog Friendly Campus Programme, which is a national UK-wide campaign that's all about making hedgehog-friendly changes on your school, college or university grounds. We're funded by the British Hedgehog Preservation Society, which is a charity that's really great. They do loads to raise awareness for hedgehogs, but their name's a bit of a mouthful, so it always trips me up. If you want to learn a little bit more about Hedgehog Friendly Campus, you can give us a follow on social at Hog Friendly, and our email address is just at the bottom for you as well if you have any questions after today. But actually, what I'm going to talk to you about for this my sort of section of today's talk is just about hedgehogs in general, really. So you might be able to pick up some tips about how you can help hedgehogs at home. But you also hopefully will just learn a little bit more about why hedgehogs are so special, and why we should care about them really as a people, as a nation. So it's the fascinating life of hedgehogs, and that might sound silly to some people because you think, well, everybody knows hedgehogs, you know all the facts, you know all the stats, but actually you kind of have to do a little bit of digging with hedgehogs to find out that there's actually a lot more to them. So this is what we're talking about today. This is the animal that we're talking about. So it's the wild hedgehog that we find here in the UK. And why do we care? Why should we care about hedgehogs? Why have we got a whole talk dedicated to, what's a common British garden mammal? There's loads of reasons why. So I guess, firstly, from my perspective, I have always loved hedgehogs. They're a really charismatic animal. Obviously, they're covered in prickles, so they're quite interesting to look at. And they've also got, what's really interesting is they've got no fight or flight response. So a hedgehog, if approached in the wild, instead of running away, it stops and, it'll kind of crouch down or it'll huddle in a ball. And that gives us, as humans, I guess, it gives us the opportunity to interact with them a little bit more than you would other wild mammals. So that's not me saying that we should all be going out into our gardens and picking hedgehogs up and poking them and prodding them and take selfies with them. But, it just gives us that opportunity to get that little bit closer to wild nature, really, than we would otherwise have the opportunity to. And that goes a long way to explaining why. And it's not just me that thinks this, they are the nation's favourite mammal. Time and again, they are voted, the favourite mammal or favourite animal of Britain or of the UK. And here's an example. This is a recent, I think it was the BBC Wildlife magazine. So they topped the polls for that particular competition. And time and time again, that's the case. And I think partly why that is, they're a really kind of charismatic animal, but they're also a real symbol of wild nature, which we often don't really have the chance to encounter in our daily lives. If you feed birds, then that's really great. You may start to see them as common. You may start to sort of take them for granted. But seeing an animal like a hedgehog or a fox or a badger, it's always a really special thing, isn't it? So another reason why hedgehogs are important, and why there's lots of programs and outreach and charities that are dedicated to them, is that they're actually what's called an indicator species. So what that means is if hedgehogs start to decline, and we'll get onto this in a minute, they are unfortunately in quite a bad way in terms of their numbers. When hedgehogs start to decline in your garden or in your village, or perhaps in your town or on your campus, wherever it is, it's an indicator. So it's an indicator that the general health of the local environment has kind of declined as well. So hedgehogs eat a lot of bugs, and if there aren't very many bugs around, tends to mean that there's not a lot of green space. So they can be used as this kind of indicator of the wider ecosystem's health. So almost like that canary in the coal mine shouting, something has to be done. So I think hedgehogs are fascinating for loads more reasons than that, but hopefully that helps to frame why we're here talking to you about hedgehogs today. Oh yeah, I did put this in. Just a sweet little video, really, to really get you on side if you're not already. This is what a hedgehog looks like. So this is some footage captured at the University of Birmingham. They do a lot of monitoring for hedgehogs on their campus to make sure that they're all doing okay. And this is a hedgehog in what we call a footprint tracking tunnel. So this is a combination of methods used to survey for hedgehogs. You can use these in your garden, on your campus, wherever. So you can see that hedgehog, aren't they lovely? Covered in prickles along their back. They've got that quite long snout. They've got a really keen sense of smell, and they use that to hunt out food in the environment. You'll notice in this video the hedgehog's out in the evening or in the night time. That is the common time to see hedgehogs out and about. It's not common to see them out and about during the day. So what do they look like other than that? So they're quite an interesting anatomy in some respects. They're about, well, up to about 30 centimetres in length. You don't tend to find them too much bigger than that, really. And they are, well, they're really cute. Then, you know, they're covered in spikes. Of course, that might make you think, well, that's not very cute. But actually, they're really cool. The spikes are really specially highly adapted to protect the animal from predators, which I think is really cool. What's nice is actually that although they've got spikes on the back, their stomach's covered in fur. So actually, if you were to see them from the underside, you'd think, oh, they were quite sort of sweet and soft and cuddly. They've got a really short neck. If you can see in this image at the top here, this is a half specimen and an example of a half specimen that you find sometimes in museums or occasionally in sort of museums or sometimes zoos, just to show you what the inside of a hedgehog looks like. So you can see it's kind of been sort of cut down the middle almost, so you can see what the skeleton looks like. They've got a really short neck here, so that neck bone that connects the head to the rest of the body. It doesn't need to be long because hedgehogs are ground feeders. They feed off the ground. They're not reaching up into the canopy to feed, so they only need a short neck. It's not on any of these pictures, but I assure you, hedgehogs do also have a tail. It's a very short tail, and it often gets forgotten about because it tends to be hidden beneath and sort of between the spines at the back of the body. But I promise you, they do have a tail. It's sweet when you notice it. Yes, they've got the long sniffy nose, very, very keen sense of smell to hunt out food in the environment. Have a look at this image here. You can see tiny, tiny little black beady eyes here, very cute little eyes, and sweet sort of almost teddy bear-like cup-shaped ears. It just adds to the absolute adorableness of hedgehogs as a species. I'm sure you agree. Yes, they're covered in spikes on their back, so between 5,000 and 7,000 of them per adult hedgehog, so loads and loads and loads of spikes that do continuously grow. So if they shed them, they will grow back. And of course, we know they're there to protect the hedgehog from danger. So typically that's predators. So a hedgehog, if approached, will curl up into a ball. And it's really clever the way they do that. So they have a pouch of muscle that sort of runs around where the spikes meet the fur. So about here, or just underside here, if you can see on this top image. And if they do hear or smell a predator, they are sort of adapted to pull that pouch together, and what it does is it expands the spikes all around the sort of soft underbelly of the hedgehog, and it protects the limbs and the face that are all otherwise quite unprotected. And then you end up with what's just a ball of spikes, that kind of stereotypical view of a hedgehog. It's fantastic to see. It's a really clever mechanism, and actually hedgehogs have stayed more or less the same in the way they look for the last 15 million years or so. So it's something that works really well for them as an adaptation. I should just say, all the images and videos and stuff we've shown you of hedgehogs so far are of the British hedgehog. So it's actually the Western European hedgehog is our wild hedgehog. It's one of about 17 different species of hedgehog. We are not talking about this hedgehog today. So this is an African pygmy hedgehog. This is much smaller in size, very, very sort of pale in colour, almost white in colour. and they're bred, and almost exclusively you'll see them as pets, so exotic pets, a completely different species to the wild hedgehog that we're talking about today. So it is useful just to be aware of that, because we don't want people to get confused thinking that wild UK hedgehogs are suitable as pets. It's actually illegal to keep wild hedgehogs as pets. So our wild hedgehogs, they do have some legal protections, whereas these ones, it's perfectly legal to keep the African pygmy hedgehogs as pets. They're very cute, very Instagrammable, but a very different species altogether. So hopefully, I do have a few videos and sort of sound bites to show you today. So hopefully the sound's going to come through okay for you. I'm just going to start with one really cool sound that is kind of stereotypical of what you might hear in your garden if there was a hedgehog foraging for food. So just have a listen. You might need to turn up your volume a little just so you can hear it. Hopefully it comes through. I'll leave it there. It's quite a long clip. Hopefully you could hear that. It sounds a little bit like a train, like a train puffing along. So that they are, again, using their really keen sense of smell to find certain types of prey. So this is their natural diet. If you can see the graph on the screen at the moment, shows you the sorts of things that they're eating with sort of relative frequency. At the bottom, you can see this this really long line towards the bottom is beetles. So that most of what they're hunting out, most of what they're eating is beetles. So ground beetles that they can find as they're kind of traveling along the ground. Also things like earwigs make up a large proportion of the frequency of their diet. Caterpillars and millipedes, as well as earthworms, are a really big component of a hedgehog's diet. Other beetles as well, so maybe not ground beetles, other types of beetle. So those kind of 5 or 6 categories of invertebrate or bug or insect, whatever you would like to call them, make up the bulk of what a hedgehog is eating in the wild. There are other things on there that, if you can see the words on the screen, because it's quite small, you might have perhaps been a little bit surprised by. So I suppose a lot of us know that hedgehogs eat things like worms and beetles, but did you know, and there have been studies into this that are absolutely really surprising, hedgehogs have also been known to eat birds, birds' eggs, and also things like mammals. So they've found this kind of stuff in the stomach contents of hedgehogs before. So they found, birds' feathers and egg shell. So they're not voracious predators in the sense that they aren't hunting out and killing birds and mammals, but they will certainly eat carrion, so dead mammals, dead birds on the side of the road, that kind of thing. So they're quite opportunistic in the way that they feed in the wild. So if there's not an awful lot of all these main kind of 5 or 6 bugs and invertebrates, then they will kind of change tact, because they have to, right? If they're really hungry in the wild, they have to change tact so they can eat, so that they can survive, so that they can bulk up and have enough fat to survive all the things that hedgehogs do, really. So some surprises on there, maybe. You might have thought of hedgehogs as like slug and snail eaters. People often say that they're the gardener's best friend, that kind of thing. It turns out actually that snails make up quite a small percentage or small proportion of what they're eating in the wild, because they're quite tough. They've got a shell on them, and they will eat slugs. But actually, slugs can be quite damaging to hedgehogs. Slugs tend to carry parasites that can transfer to hedgehogs. So, in an ideal world, they would be eating all these other main bits towards the bottom of that graph there. I told you there'd be some videos and some sound bites. This is a video that perhaps if there are any young viewers or anybody that's particularly sensitive to gore, perhaps turn away now. But I always like to include this because it's quite interesting, just to show kind of the range of things that hedgehogs will eat. So turn away now if you're not into gore or if you're eating your lunch. But this is a small hedgehog, so a juvenile hedgehog, eating a dead rabbit on the side of the road. So a friend of mine sent this to me a few years ago, and I just thought it was fascinating. This is in a kind of rural location, countryside location. Look, you can see how tiny that hedgehog is in comparison to the rabbit. But they'll have a go at pretty much anything, really. So yeah, quite interesting, I think. In our gardens, so if you're a nice person, perhaps you're putting food out for hedgehogs, things like cat food and dog food is appropriate to feed them. That wouldn't be considered their natural diet, but it's just a little bit of a supplement for them to kind of keep them ticking over. It's a nice thing to do if you're interested in feeding wildlife. Stick to cat food or dog food when it comes to hedgehogs, and just a shallow dish of fresh water. Hedgehogs have got some awesome behaviours. All of these bullet points are really why I love hedgehogs, to be honest. They're nocturnal, for starters. So that means, as I said earlier, you only tend to see them out at night. And that's because, yes, they are a nocturnal animal, so they sleep during the day, which actually adds to the mystery, really, of hedgehogs, because you tend, as people, we tend not to see them very often, right? When we do, it's really, really special. You hear one in your garden at night, or you bump into one on your way back from the pub at night or something like that. Because they are nocturnal, it actually means that, and this is the same for any nocturnal animal really, if you do see them out during the daytime, it tends to actually indicate that there might be something wrong with them. So there might be, there might be some kind of first aid, SOS emergency. So it's always worth, if you do see a hedgehog out during the daytime, getting on the phone to perhaps a rescue centre or a vet. We would recommend the British Hedgehog Preservation Society actually as a first port of call, just to check that that hedgehog's okay, really. They are also a solitary species, so that means hedgehogs tend to live their lives completely independently of one another. They don't live in family groups or social groups like a lot of mammals do. So badgers, foxes, humans, for instance, all live in family groups or social groups because it benefits them. The hedgehog, that seems to not be the case. You don't really see them in groups or of more than one, unless it's for very particular purposes. This example at the top, this is two male hedgehogs in a garden. They're competing over food resources. So if food attracts hedgehogs into a garden, then you may see more than one at once. Mating season is also another example, but otherwise they operate a system of mutual avoidance, which I think is quite hilarious. They just don't need no other hedgehog. So they're a really active animal, actually. You'll probably be surprised to learn that they can travel, sort of 1 or 2 kilometres in a single night. For such a small animal, that's quite a long way to travel. So they're really, really active, looking for mates, food, nesting sites, all of that kind of thing. And nesting sites are really important to hedgehogs over the year, and particularly that's the case when it comes to winter time. So hedgehogs are actually hibernators, so they will hunker down when the weather gets very cold and food becomes very scarce, so that they can survive over that period. Hedgehogs should just be coming out of hibernation at the moment, in some areas anyway. Typically, we expect all hedgehogs to have emerged from hibernation kind of around the middle of April. And hedgehogs are using our gardens and green spaces for lots of different reasons. It's worth bearing all of these in mind. So they might be using your garden or green space for feeding, so foraging, for nesting, so perhaps for hibernating, just simply for resting in, so between bouts of foraging or just periods where it's very warm. But also for things like breeding. So the breeding season is around May time. It's a very noisy affair, so you never know, you might be lucky enough to witness or hear that. And also just simply for travelling through. So it's important that we open up our garden so hedgehogs can perform all these really important behaviours. So you can open up your garden with a simple hedgehog highway, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a sec. I said I'd show you some more sounds. This one's a really lovely sound if you have a little listen. This is the sound of baby hedgehogs. The name for a baby hedgehog is a hoglet, by the way. So have a little listen to what a hoglet sounds like. So there's that kind of, it almost sounds like baby birds, doesn't it? That cheeping or peeping sound. So hedgehogs as a species, they breed from mid-spring through to late summer. It's quite a long breeding season or breeding period. The females, they build nests, so breeding nests out of things like leaves and moss in kind of areas of the garden where they can kind of seek shelter, so perhaps underneath a hedge or underneath an upturned wheelbarrow or maybe underneath a shed. Because she's got to keep them protected. She can have up to 4 or 5 of these hoglets in a single litter, and she's got to look after them herself. So really, after this initial mating period, you can see this photo at the top here, that's the male on top and the female underneath. After that initial mating period, there is no paternal care whatsoever. The male just trundles off and finds another female to mate with. So he's not responsible for supporting her. So she's a super mum, really, I would say. You can see her down at the bottom. This is mum moving one of her babies. She's not eating it, so you can see she's holding a baby in her mouth. She's moving it from nest site to nest site. Perhaps their original nest was disturbed through garden clearance or something similar. And you can see this lovely image on the right hand side. That's mum with 4 hoglets. She's taking them out there on foraging trips to teach them how to be a hedgehog, really. The babies are independent at 6 weeks old, which is a really rapid time period to try and teach the babies how to live in the world, really. And babies that are born this year will be ready to breed next year. So it's quite rapid in terms of development there. Did I just skip a slide? No, I didn't. So this is a really, really interesting behaviour, just to tie up the behaviour side of things, that we don't tend to see hugely often, but it is perfectly normal, but looks quite concerning. This is a behaviour that hedgehogs perform called self-anointing. They're the only known species of mammal, I think, to perform this behaviour. When it tends to be in response to strong smells, hedgehogs will froth up the saliva in their mouths and then lick it onto the back of their spines. It looks bizarre. They have to contort their bodies into all sorts of crazy shapes in order to do it. And at first sight could look perhaps a little bit worrying. If you ever do see a hedgehog doing this in the wild, don't worry, it's perfectly natural. We just don't really know why they do it. So if anybody's joined us today that's looking perhaps for a PhD project or an undergrad project, maybe there's a topic for you there. We find hedgehogs in the UK in lots of different places, so that we find them really all across the UK mainland. So we can see on the right here, that's like a distribution map of hedgehogs, where the real hotspots are those kind of solid blue sections. There are some areas on that map it looks that hedgehogs are absent, sort of around here, and in Ireland as well. That's just a lack of data as opposed to a lack of hedgehogs. But there certainly are some areas where hedgehogs don't inhabit, and that tends to be moors, marshes and pine woods. So those 3 kind of categories of habitat just don't support hedgehog life very well. Where we do see them, though, places like woodland edges, gardens, parks and fields in urban and rural contexts. So your gardens are a perfect sort of habitat for hedgehogs, really. Just a little kind of bit on the year of the hedgehog, really. So I mentioned hedgehogs are about to emerge from hibernation. You can see here, so this is where the main active period begins. And there's a lot to fit into that sort of main active season for hedgehogs, from courtship and breeding to the babies being born, to the young becoming independent, and then all hedgehogs really have to build up lots of fat in October time in order to hibernate come sort of November, December. And that hibernation season really can last from November, December time all the way through to late February, early March, maybe even into April, depending on what the temperature is like. So it's very flexible, the hedgehog's hibernation season. There are some things to just be aware of throughout the year of the hedgehog, as you know, garden owners, green space owners, I suppose, that they can be particular hazard points for hedgehogs, really. So one in particular is actually the breeding season. So when the mums are building nests for the babies, for the hoglets, these nests are really vulnerable to disturbance. So if we're out in our gardens, you know, tidying up a corner of the garden that we've been meaning to do for weeks, and there's a hedgehog breeding nest in there, mum may abandon the babies. She might even, and this is really strange, she might even eat them and then move on and you know, hopefully have another nest of hoglets. So it's really careful. It's really important that you're careful over that season, which really can run any time from May to the end of September. Just being you know, really cautious to make sure you're checking that there's no nest of hedgehogs before you're doing any land clearance. Bonfire night is another really obvious one, I suppose. So bonfire night, come November time, hedgehogs are preparing for hibernation. They might set up shop underneath a log pile, which if we were then to come and set it alight, it can cause hedgehogs quite a lot of aggro, a lot of damage, may even kill them. Please be aware if you're doing any strimming and mowing in your garden as well. Hedgehogs can rest in long grass. So if you're coming in with a strimmer to cut the grass, you could cut a hedgehog. So it's just some hazard points to be aware of. And the reason why it's important is because actually hedgehogs are at real risk at the moment. So we've lost up to 75% of our wild hedgehogs since the year 2000. Hedgehogs are actually now vulnerable to extinction. They're on Britain's red list for Britain's mammals. So the picture is not looking particularly great for hedgehogs, and that's more the case in rural areas. In fact, just last month, a recent report showed that hedgehogs in urban areas seem to be recovering ever so slightly. So that's positive news. But more generally, as a species, the trend has been one of a decline. And there are lots of reasons for that. Lots and lots of threats that they face, from getting caught in ponds or drowning in ponds, getting run over by cars, the threat of urban development, getting rid of lots of green space in favour of hard spaces, industrial agriculture, or massive strimmers, lots of pesticides being used. Litter and netting is a real problem. Hedgehogs can easily get trapped in that. We've mentioned bonfires already, but yeah, certainly they can be trapped in fires of any kind because they don't have a fight or flight response. In urban areas, actually being segregated, so having the environment sort of segregated by walls and fences is a big problem for hedgehogs. Bug killer, pesticides, herbicides, all of those things have an impact on hedgehogs directly or perhaps indirectly through what they're eating. But also things like dogs, foxes, badgers, all kind of predators of the hedgehog, really. So a huge range of threats, unfortunately, for them. So it's no surprise they're doing so badly. A really, really quick video just to show you from the British Hedgehog Preservation Society about some things you can consider in your own garden to help hedgehogs.
They're one of our best loved mammals, but hedgehogs are in steep decline. The secret to their survival, however, may lie in your own back garden. Private gardens can be wildlife havens, and if all joined up, would effectively form Britain's largest nature reserve. With our help, urban hedgehogs can thrive. Firstly, they need access. Hedgehogs must roam around a mile each night, so one garden isn't enough. And fences pose a problem. Making a 13cm hole under your fence allows them to move freely. Encourage your neighbours to do the same, and you will be creating a hedgehog highway. Let a corner of your garden go wild. Thick vegetation and fallen leaves offer a cosy retreat. And log piles provide both shelter and bugs for breakfast. Avoid using pesticides and slug pellets, as these can be harmful. Leave out a shallow dish of water overnight, especially during dry spells. Never offer milk, as it can cause sickness. Unfortunately, bonfires offer tempting homes for hogs, so always check underneath before lighting. Making these small gestures will go a long way towards ensuring that hedgehogs continue to roam our gardens.
Good top tips there from the British Hedgehog Preservation Society, and you can check out their website at the link below. So loads we can do and should do really to help hedgehogs. All will benefit the environment in general, but benefit us as well. I had huge joy from having a hedgehog visit my garden last summer. Sat out there most nights with a cup of tea under a blanket, watching the hedgehog trundle around. My neighbours probably thought I was bonkers, but I really enjoyed it. So yeah, some really good things that you can do to help hedgehogs on the screen there. Check out Hedgehog Street, the website, if you're interested in learning more about how you can help hedgehogs in your own gardens. But as I said, there are a number of hedgehog-related projects out there, and Hedgehog Friendly Campus is another one of them. So that's the programme that I run, and it's all about completing activities on campus that protect hedgehogs from hazards, enhance their habitat, and also educate people about what they can do to help hedgehogs from home. So if you're joining us from a university, a college, or a school today, and you're interested in getting involved, then please do. We would welcome you to get involved. So here are our contact details, just in case you needed a reminder. So you can get us at Hog Friendly on social media, and our email address just at the bottom as well. So thank you ever so much for listening, and back over to you, Catherine.
Thank you very much, Jo. Before we move on, just a couple of comments and a question in the chat. So Kim said that she's actually seen one hedgehog fiercely hiss fiercely at a cat and the cat run away. When Kim told me that yesterday, I was amazed. I didn't think that hedgehogs were quite so, well, can't think of the word now, but they're very defensive and they can defend themselves.
Absolutely, yeah. And they can make some kind of crazy noises when they are doing so. I've heard them scream. They scream almost like, like foxes can scream, almost as kind of shrill as that. But yeah, they can definitely defend themselves.
Yeah. Another one from Karen saying that she had visitors all through the winter. They didn't get the hibernation memo.
How interesting. I guess, yeah. So, well, we've got much warmer winters than ever before. So there's not as many triggers for hedgehogs to actually go into hibernation, to enter hibernation.
And the other one, a question. Jill uses peppermint oil to keep rats away. Will it stop the hedgehog coming into the garden?
Not that I've ever heard. No. And does that work for you actually? Peppermint oil. I've heard people say they've used it and it hasn't worked. But no, as far as I'm aware, it doesn't keep hedgehogs away. But I'd be interested to know if peppermint oil works for you. Perhaps you could let me know in the chat.
Great, thanks, Jo. I will move on and just talk very briefly about what we've been doing at the university. And then if anyone has any questions, please feel free to shout. So, like I say, just to talk about what we've done, we started with Hedgehog Friendly Campus last September. We had a student work for us over the summer doing a biodiversity intern with us, and she set us up, really got us going. We talked about it for a while, but never really found the time to progress. So we started in September and set out to achieve bronze by the end of the year, and we found out in February that we were awarded with the bronze award. So we're really pleased with that. And we're currently working to achieve silver this year. When we set up last year, we formed a working group which has got representatives from grounds. So Kelly Baker sits in the group, myself from sustainability. We've got Shannon Stevenson from communications, so she supports us university-wide with comms. And then we've got a couple of staff and some students to sit on the group as well. And we're really lucky to have Tanya Carey, who's in the meeting today, who's done lots of surveys with small mammals and other species as well in the past. So it's great to have someone who's got some experience of this. And then we've got about 30 volunteers, both staff and students, signed up to help us going forward. And we actually had a launch event yesterday when some of those staff and students could help us. So just to run through some of the things that we've done, we've got posters up in various places around the university, in the library, the Postgrad Hub and Ramfell, and these posters can be printed and put elsewhere. If you're in a location where you've got a notice board that we could put them up, we'd definitely be keen to do so. So please get in touch and I can share those with you. We also do lots on social media, so we do Wildlife Wednesday posts, and many of these probably once a month are at least based on hedgehogs. So we've done about what to do if people find a hedgehog that needs help. We've talked about the fact that we're part of the Hedgehog Friendly Campus and what people can do, and the things that we've done on campus as well. And we also had a campaign around Bonfire Night, raising awareness of how to build your bonfire, and what people can do to reduce the impact and lessen the likelihood of affecting hedgehogs when you're going out for your bonfire, and what you can do to support the local community as well, raising awareness to groups that do bonfires in your area. We've also done some litter picks on campus. We had 2 or 3 last year, both staff ones, and the Student Plogging Society did some as well. And we actually did an event yesterday as well. We had half a dozen people. Got 6 bags as well, reasonably well full as well, in this area back down by Tossall Lakes. We were amazed how much we'd got when we were only there a few months earlier. So it really does show the need to continuously do these. They shouldn't be. It always frustrates me that we do need to litter pick, but there's places hidden that the people that do litter picking for work can't get to. We've also built some bug hotels. There's a couple of really good looking ones down by the Tossall Lakes that the grounds team have done, and we've got some over by the physics building as well. and we're hoping to do some more the coming winter, and to actually do some workshops as well, where people will be able to help us to build those bug hotels in situ. And then the grounds team are really supportive. Something we've been pushing for a number of years is to reduce the amount of mowing we do on campus. COVID allowed us to do that, and so we've got large numbers of areas, not in central campus but further afield, mainly in accommodation, where we reduce the mowing. And the grounds team have also been quite keen to mow pitches into the grass. So in one place there was a sun, for instance, so it creates better habitat, not just for hedgehogs but for other species as well. We've also planted some hedgerows this winter, planted more than 1,000 trees, some of which are hedgerows, so they'll develop into good wildlife corridors as well. And we've done some hedge laying this winter and the winter before, which is the image on the right. For those of you who don't know, it basically means pretty much cutting down the stems of the hedge plants, but not all the way. So you leave a small section where the plant regrows from, thickens up the bush, and makes it a much better habitat, not just for hedgehogs, like I say, but for other birds and insects as well. So there's been some, last year we did it by Cryfield Residences, done a bit more there this year. And this picture is over at the Security Gatehouse by WBS. We were also really lucky. We raised awareness of the fact that we had signed up to the Hedgehog Friendly Campus initiative, and the next thing I knew, our carpenters had said, we've built some houses for you. So they built us 2 or 3 different houses that we've located around campus, buried them a little bit, so they're a bit more less of a, well, a bit more welcoming for the hedgehogs, and they're hopefully going to build us some more as well. So that's a good thing that, like I say, we didn't even need to ask. We had a launch event yesterday, spoke to about 25 different people, many of which are keen to support us going further forward. And Tanya kindly brought in one of her tunnels that she's used before to do surveys. And we will be doing surveys this spring. So we may be a hedgehog friendly campus, but at the moment we don't know if we have any hedgehogs on campus. So looking to do some surveys, which will need staff and students to help us to monitor those tunnels. So if anyone's interested in that, please get in touch. That's an overview from me. Has anyone got any questions? Is there something else in the chat? Let me go back to the top. So to answer the question about peppermint, Joe, they've found that it does work. You've seen it, so that's good to see.
Yeah.
Hazel said she's got a hedgehog house in the garden. It looks like there's been some activity in it, which looks like a nest. How do I know it was a hedgehog and not another animal? What are the main signs hedgehogs leave behind?
Yeah, I think I've answered that question, but it's probably worth saying. You can get hold of, and in fact we rent them out as part of the programme, so if you're interested, let us know. But you can get hold of wildlife cameras quite cheaply. That's the kind of best way to know what's actually using your nest box, so to figure out whether it's a hedgehog or some other animal, because we actually wouldn't really recommend that you look inside a hedgehog nest box for the reasons that we talked about earlier. So if it's a breeding nest, it can disturb the mum. She might run away, she might abandon the babies, but also it just can cause them a bit of distress, really. So if there is a hedgehog in there, it must be really scary to have its the lid of its nest essentially removed and people peering in at it, although I can see why it would be tempting to do so. I think probably the best, if there is such a thing as the best time to look in the nest box would be, well, there isn't really one, to be honest, but they'll be using a nest box for nesting for all sorts of reasons throughout the year. So even if it's just a resting nest throughout the summer, it could be a breeding nest, as I mentioned, or it could be a hibernation nest. So really they could be using it all throughout the year. I know some people like to clean their hedgehog houses out, and probably the best time to do that would be after the breeding season, but before hibernation. But to be honest, I don't know whether it's necessarily necessary to do so. But yeah, hopefully that gives you a few pointers.
Thank you very much, Jo. And the question about social media, we're at Warwick Unisust. I'll put it in the chat. And we're on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter. And somebody lives in Napton on the Hill and setting up a hog safe village, only a few starting it, and it's a bit overwhelming. The first port of call is to get people to cut holes in their fencing. Sounds good. Well done, Charlotte.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And Tanya's suggested about putting some dark ink on masking tape to see what's around. Thank you ever so much, everyone, for joining us and for contributing. Does anyone have any other questions? You can put it in the chat, or if you, I'm happy to unmute you, and if anyone wants to say something or share the video. I suppose just to finish off from saying, we've got 20 to 30 volunteers. Like I say, we're really keen to get more volunteers joining us at the university. So if you want to email sustainability@warwick.ac.uk, we'll be in touch and add you to our list. And like I say, hopefully we've been doing some surveys. We've got a large campus, so the more surveys we can do, the better. But we need volunteers to help us to do those. So yeah, everybody's welcome. So Kim said can provide guidance on creating hedgy houses. Some are commercially available, ones that are not actually safe for them.
There's a link. There's a really good guide from Hedgehog Street. If there's time, I can try and dig the link and pop it in the chat box. Or if there's not, perhaps you could share it afterwards. I don't know if you've got people's.
You can find it.
I found it. Had to work quickly to find it. Yeah, Hedgehog Street's a really good place to get that kind of information from, and that's come through. That's the guide that we would recommend you follow.
Thanks, Jo. Unless there's anything else, another one, Tanya. Wild spaces are so much better than creating houses. I've got a house in my garden, but the hog never used it, but creates wild nests in leaves and log piles instead. I think that's very true. Keep it wild. It's an excuse.
Yeah, an excuse to do less work.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the principles I live by in my own garden. But
Exactly.
also, what you're doing then is replacing some of that lost habitat, whereas giving them a house is, it's a nice gesture, and they may or may not use it. Whereas a log pile, a leaf pile, an area of longer grass, as Tanya says, is probably going to be preferred.
Okay, thanks very much, Jo, and thanks everyone else. Like I say, any questions, email sustainability@warwick, and we'll be happy to help.
Thanks everyone.
Home-educated learning as well. That's really good.
Oh, nice.
Thanks all. Bye. Thanks, Jo. Bye.